And what was that particularly saying that was so dangerous or discomforting?
I have no idea. I want to get to this topic.
This has been happening several times, but not to this extent. They didn't put it out there. And I tried to, well, you heard the thing I said about screenshot then. Okay.
So I want to bring this up here. So this is Tucker Carlson, and he was interviewing somebody. His name is Auron McIntyre. So this segment here says, what is American culture? I mean, what is a heritage American?
The large amount of our government right now is just a wealth transfer between heritage Americans and the new political class that's being moved into rule society. That's just the dynamic we're seeing. And this happened in Rome. This has happened many, many times over. You can see many historical examples.
So the H-1B thing is just so the enemy is what you call heritage Americans. What are those?
Heritage Americans are those that are actually tied. You could find their last names in the Civil War registry. Like they have a tie to the history and to the land. And, Samuel Huntington is a guy who I really like. He wrote the Clash of Civilizations and Who Are We? And, I think won his debate with Francis Fukuyama pretty decisively. But, he said in Who Are We, his book about American identity, the core of American identity is the Anglo-Protestant spirit. And he's a man of the center left, as a Harvard professor. This is a guy who's not, he's not, you can only be an Anglo or a Protestant to be part of America. But he says even the Catholics and Jews in America take on this Anglo-Protestant affect in some way. And so you have to have this majority culture for people to assimilate to. And so when we're talking about a heritage American, we're either talking about someone who is tied specifically to that tradition or someone who has come here and has been here for generations, but understands that they are conforming to that way of being, that's the core of society.
And what is that way? Can you describe the Anglo-Protestant worldview?
I mean, obviously, we could spend entire books on that, and that has been done.
Well, it's almost never mentioned.
It's true, yeah.
And which I think is interesting because those are the people who founded the country and set up every system that we're benefiting from now, from our economic and political systems, or have been benefiting from, maybe not anymore, but those are the founders. It was 100% Anglo-Protestant, like 100%.
Right.
So why don't we ever mention that culture?
Because we're very terrified of the idea that ideas are particular to cultures and peoples. That sounds very scary in old world.
It's true.
Of course it's true. It's obviously true. And we know that because now we laugh whenever we try to export democracy to Afghanistan or something, right?
Well, I know it from traveling a lot. Right, exactly. I go to different countries and I don't hate their cultures or ideas at all. I don't have to live under them. I'm just visiting. I think they're really interesting, but they're very different because the people are different, inherently different.
Yes. And when you change the people, you change the culture, which is why our Western governments are so busy trying to replace those populations.
Yeah. When you change the population, you change the country.
You change the country and you change the principles that it's going to be founded on. We look at the Declaration of Independence and it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident. If you go to Afghanistan, are the truths of the Constitution self-evident to them?
No.
Of course not. Because when they said self-evident, they meant to people in our tradition, to us, to the people who descended us, who share our values, who speak our language, who speak, the type of heritage that we understand. That's where that comes from. Again, it doesn't mean that other people can't be grafted into that and absorb that. But the idea of a purely propositional nation that is in no way tied to a culture or a people, but is entirely a collection of abstract things agreed to in some social contract before society even began is just ridiculous. And it's not the way the Constitution was even understood when it was written. Our founder said very famously that the Constitution is for a moral and religious people. They had a particular understanding of how we would have to live our lives and what that would look like if we were going to be able to live under the republic that they erected.
All true. I interrupted you with my outburst of rage when I asked you what exactly are the presupposition. What's the nature of this Anglo-Protestant culture that founded this country.
I think this is where people get a lot of the ideas of a decent amount of individualism. This has always been a key part of it. Also, restrained government, the idea that government would be limited is something tied to the Magna Carta, right? Like, yes, they had became a constitutional monarchy, but we can see a direct line from what the English were doing with their set of government and the way that we understand our society. The idea that free speech is something sacred, that the individual conscience and the practice of religion is something that needs to be maintained. These are all core values that when you actually look in other societies, they don't look the same. Free speech in Germany does not look the same.
There's no Slavic society, and I love Slavic societies, just being honest. They're great, but they don't see free speech as a foundational God-given right. They just don't.
Right. And they're
whiter than I am. So it's not, it is like, it's much, that is to your very smart point about lumping all these different, very distinct cultures into the white group eliminates differences that we should be thinking about. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Even inside European cultures, vastly different traditions, closer perhaps than say someone in Eastern Asia, but still very, very different from place to place. And the fact that we've just kind of melted that all down into this, binary or between a couple of few races, as if that's like the complete understanding of who peoples are and how they live their lives, is just silly. And again, I think that serves the purpose of really just melting down culture in general, right? Like, it looks like race is very divisive identity politics, right? Which to some degree it is. But the reason it feels so divisive, the reason it feels so unnatural, is it's thoroughly unrooted from actual organic ways of being. It's completely removed from the things that make your life better when you have a holistic identity. It's just this rough collection of hatred for people who happen to have a different skin color, which doesn't get you anywhere good.
I agree. This nation, heritage, culture is Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, well, that's also interesting. If you pick them up and you look at the written renditions, archaic Old German, Old in English, Old Scandinavian read almost identically. The national language for the ruling caste in England, meaning the Plantagenets, that's William the Conqueror all the way up through when Oliver Cromwell overthrew the monarchy, was French in terms of their language and culture. So you've got a mix of the Romance, that's what they call French, Italian, Spanish, and such like. And you've got English, which brings in all of the rest of it. And you've added in some African and other places and Native American. So it's, as I said earlier, the United States is modern Rome, where all things come together. And Rome had an interesting situation that existed for 1,000 years that was disrupted by Christianity, and that was any religion or culture that was practiced or possessed by any Roman citizen was a legitimate one for Rome, so long as it did not advocate cannibalism or human sacrifice, even though that might have been practiced in the shadows. And that has made us a great nation because it has allowed a lot of things to be added to the mix. And what we wind up with is an alloy that is very strong. Now, well, that's why, by the way, one last little point. That's why we have free speech, because those people who were rejected by European society came over here. And they had been in a serf, peasant, underclass, commoner situation versus the landed aristocracy that ran everything in Europe. So they came over here, but they still brought the tradition through the English yeoman and commoner, who was a longbowman and was expected to be very warlike so that England could run and dominate the economic and, shall we say, political activity in Europe. So we had a culture of warriors and fighters who were very violent but understood the necessity of cooperating. That's why we have the Second Amendment. And the First Amendment is to allow this warlike militant group of people the opportunity to freely discuss the issues rather than just killing each other off. Now, that is being suppressed. It just happened to me. I was just telling us about it. Now,
I want to swing back to
but back to one thing,
culture, the heritage, the American
one
heritage.
point about this that he's forgetting. What he is complaining about in terms of human nature is something known as xenophobia. It's spelled with an X.
Who was complaining?
The guy that was talking, he wasn't necessarily complaining. He was making an observation about this thing of being against others who are different. That is a fundamental characteristic of human nature. And we have done a lot over thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, tens of thousands of years to get beyond that. But it is part of our constituent nature, our psychological makeup. And it is something that needs to be dealt with. We all find the different repugnant. And you have only to look at food to see that. You have only to look at culture to see that. You have only to look at what people perceive as important in each other. In other words, do you have on the team uniform, meaning what does your face look like? What does your hair look like?
Well, also,
and these are unfortunate things, but they're realities that have to be worked around.
But also, the standard culture here in America is Anglo-Saxon. It is.
It is.
That is what you have to assimilate to. When we look at the Constitution, even though, yes, it is somewhat modeled after Rome as far as the Roman Empire, but it's Anglo-Saxon. It's nothing wrong with that. That is the culture here. When they talk about a United States of America, you are American, right? And even when I go to the South, and I'm from the North, they will call me Yankee, right? So even from North South, you have somewhat of two different cultures, but the overall underlining belly here is the ones who came here, conquered, implemented their constitution, their laws, their way of life is by way of Western Anglo-Saxon white culture.
That's what I said. You look at a Chinese convention in the People's Republic of China and everybody has on a suit and tie. That's Western.
I want to play this clip here.
And one little last remark. I saw somebody who was heir to an African throne and his brother. Several hours on several occasions, they were meeting in my green room and we had discussions. And I got a practical demonstration of the difference between what kings and queens means when it is applied on the ground and what our way of doing things is about. And I very seriously doubt that the woke people would enjoy, let alone tolerate, what they are talking about when they want to go Pan-African, if you want to go back to that cultural tradition. What we have is a Western tradition that was brought here that has had influence from all over the world inputted into it. And it's not a bad thing.
Okay. I want to play this clip here of Anthony Scalia. This is before Scalia. This is before he was a Supreme Court justice.
Diversity alone is not what makes a great nation. I mean, diversity alone makes some of the tribal societies of the world that never quite make it, such as some of the places in the Middle East where we're trying to establish nationhood. As I said earlier, it's part of our tradition that everybody can be an American. But there has been a common culture. Yeah, you don't have to belong to it, but there has been that. And
what is it? What is it? What is it?
Well, okay, you want to know what it is? Number one. Okay.
Is there a bond? Is there a common culture?
I think. Let me tell you a story. My junior year of college, I studied in Switzerland, and I used to get really annoyed when the French-Swiss professors I had would refer constantly to les pays anglo-saxons, the Anglo-Saxon countries, meaning England, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, okay, Canada. I said, you know, hey, my name is Scalia, and I'm as American as anybody. Look at this face. Is this an Anglo-Saxon face? I had never been in England, but at the end of my year, I went to England, and I felt at home. There is no doubt that American culture, American common culture, which nobody has to belong to, originates with English culture. And that includes Shakespeare, it includes nursery rhymes that we all know and that we use as examples. That's our common culture. And I think the framers recognized that. Diversity is fine, but diversity does not make a nation.
Okay, by the way,
he kind of echoed the same thing what the other gentleman was saying.
Yeah, but one little correction. If he looked like that before he got on the Supreme Court, he would look like a mummy now. That's not necessarily prior to him getting on the Supreme Court. Scalia's been there for a long time. I'd say this, you know what the answer to this whole thing is? It's ancient. You know what the saying is? When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So when you're in the United States, do as the citizens of the Republic do. Mm-hmm. So that is a polyglot culture that's made up of a lot of things, but the people who had the guns and the military structure to take advantage of this continent imposed it. And damn near everybody in the world has somewhat adopted that culture today. So it's a Western culture. It's a U.S. culture. I've been in some capitals around the world, and they do listen to the same kind of music all over the world now. They dress the same all over the world now. And to an extent, some of the ideation they have is universal, and to an extent, it's not. But that's just the way it is. There was Rome, and then there were the provinces.
See, this is right. Correction, because this description was incorrect, because they said a young Anthony Scalia. That's how you pronounce it? Scalia. Future Supreme Court Justice upholding Anglo-American law. So it says future, but in 2006, he was a justice since 1986.
That's what I was saying.
One second. He died in 2016, and that was the end. He was still a justice. He didn't retire.
I know.
So he was there for a long time, him and Ruth, right?
That's what I said. Something's wrong with that. In 2006, he was not a future Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, so
he's been on a while.
Okay, so I think it's important. This is just a sidebar. This is why I'm saying this. I think it's important when people write the little descriptions under above these videos, we should do our own research.
Yeah. Like I was telling you, one of the things I'm famous for in life is representing Ron Ward over in West Memphis, Arkansas, who at the time was the youngest person in the world on death row. I got his conviction unanimously overturned by the Arkansas Supreme Court. Somebody sent me an article, actually from the LA Times, where they didn't even mention my name, which is kind of like discussing the OJ case without putting Johnny Cochran's name in there. They totally erased me from the equation. So you can't always rely on what you get off of the net or Google. And there's that thing in the top left-hand corner about AI. And if you activate what it says about it, it says you should not totally rely upon it because it may be unreliable. And I know a lot of lawyers have been getting in trouble for getting their briefs written by AI, which turned out to be just total fantasy rather than reality. But it is what it is. So
yeah, Ruth, she was nominated by Clinton, and she was confirmed in the Supreme Court in '93, but he was already there.
He was there since the 1980s.
Yeah, by Ronald Reagan.
Yes, that's why my remark was that was not before he got on the U.S. Supreme Court, because that was what was this? 2006, 8, or whatever it was.
This says 2006, so he was already a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, he'd been on there.
He just aged well. He just aged.
Yeah, but he'd been on there 30-some years already.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Yeah. So the whole point is, so forget the sidebar now. Going back to what he was saying, he said when he went to England, he felt like home. That's just like some Black people when they first go to Africa, they say they feel like they're at home. I've never been to any country in the continent of Africa, so I don't think I would say, oh, I feel like home, especially because I know I do have lineage literally from England and it's not Black. So maybe I would feel both. I don't know. So the fact is that because I'm an American, it's not like, ooh, you take on white culture. That's the heritage culture here. You get what I'm saying? So automatically we're born into it. Let
me say this. I had some African roommates when I was at UCLA, and most of them were from Nigeria. All right. They had a dish. It was called soup and farina. You'd take a ball of farina and you'd mold it in your hand and dip it in the soup mix, or what they call soup, and you'd eat it. Very unsanitary, but that's the way they did things. But farina was interesting because it was traditional with them, but farina is an American food product. That's the brand name for the stuff, farina. We used to eat it as kids instead of grits sometimes, or oatmeal. So I find it interesting that inextricably tied up with something that was known as soup and farina is the African stew, and the American made product, literally, that you put in it. I've been around the world, and I notice when you sit at a table, there'll usually be Tabasco sauce on the table. And over here, there'll always be Worcestershire available if you go someplace with a steak. Worcestershire is English. Tabasco is American, but they are ubiquitous. So here you have this African nation where a classic food dish is soup and farina. Their stew with an American cereal. Imagination of the world. When you think about pasta, what do you think about? Italy? But Marco Polo brought pasta back from China.
Yeah, that wasn't true. I did research that.
But I would beg to differ for you. Look at Chinese noodles and look where pasta came from. And
Chinese noodles look different from Italian pasta.
But they are basically the same, and I'll tell you about that. Olive Garden, when it started off 40-some years ago,
I don't want to venture off to that because we have a guy.
I mean, I'm not getting off into it, but I'm just saying they had a machine they used to have at Olive Gardens right at the front. They moved them since it was unsanitary, and they would elect what they were going to give you: noodles, rotini, spaghetti, or they could even do the Chinese editions, and they would make it right there with the same machine. So it was a little blurb they used to have up there about how ubiquitous this whole thing was with this kind of bread product.
Noodles, any culture in any part of the world can make noodles, just because everyone has those ingredients. It is true that two things could be true at the same time, that the Asians, the Chinese had their type of noodles and the Italians had their type of noodles. Marco Polo didn't have to bring noodles to Italy because they were already making it.
They weren't already here.
but yes, because noodles is made from flour and water, and
I know, but Medici and some others did some interesting things to people, including stringing them up in nasty ways because of this stuff and what had been brought back from China. Gunpowder.
But Marco bringing noodles back from China, that is a myth.
That's Google. Yeah,
No, I didn't know. I actually did a deeper research than just Google.
Well, okay, but I mean, I would assert the contrary for what it's worth. But it's like gunpowder, or how about Irish potatoes? The potatoes that are known as Irish potatoes and caused so many from Ireland to come over here after the potato famine, those came from North America. All right. So, you get this. Where did watermelon originate? Where did black pepper originate? Where did the tomato originate? You see, you have all of these things that are ubiquitous around the world. Where does rice come from? What cultures were founded on rice? How about corn? The Romans used to call wheat corn.
Rice, and that's another thing. We can't say, oh, rice only came here. No, rice was already implemented in different parts of the world. You had different rice, like jollof rice. That's from the Jollof tribe, what we call now in Senegal. So they made their own type of rice. White rice is all, that is more synonymous with China or the Asian culture. So each part of the world may have their rice, but it may be different types of rice and how they make it. Because rice, we have rice fields already here on this land here. So
no, we didn't have at the beginning, but it is a product, an agricultural product that is ubiquitous around the world now. But at one time it wasn't. You can dig skeletons up out of the ground, find their age by various aging detection methods.